The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. The Devil. Herman Webster Mudgett. H. Holmes, America's first serial killer. The White City, Chicago's World Fair of 1893, World's Columbian Exposition, the fair that changed America. The Devil in the White City tells the story of two men, Daniel H. Burnham and H. Holmes. Daniel H. Burnham is the architect who, along with his partner, is in charge of building the World Fair. Unfortunately, his partner died before the completion of the fair. H. Holmes, the serial killer who thrived on the Chicago World's Fair. He lured countless women into his home, called the Castle, and murdered them. The Chicago World's Fair was a place of happiness and joy during a time of sadness and oppression. Many disasters and illnesses stood in the way of the completion of the World's Fair. However, once it was done, it was better than anyone could have expected. The Devil in the White City is a documentary. Erik Larson was both a journalist, because he did all his research without internet or other sources, and a historian, because he reported on news from the past. There are actually two main topics and problems to this story. The first main topic is that of Burnham and his architects. Their problem is reaching the deadline of May 1st, 1893 for the completion of the World Fair. The second main topic is about Holmes. His problem is that he kills people. The audience for this book is for kids anywhere from ages 12 to adults about age 100. I would say kids of age 12 because Larson does a pretty good job of subtly mentioning it when Holmes murders people in a way that is not too gruesome for kids to handle. I would say adults age 100 because if they're any older than that, then they were alive when it happened. The clarity of the book changes throughout the story. When Larson is talking of Burnham and his architects, it is generally pretty clear and easy to understand. However, when he talks about Holmes, it becomes unclear and somewhat mysterious. I'd say that Larson was pretty effective in intertwining the two stories of his novel in an interesting way. During the novel, Larson makes some interesting points. His first point is to surround yourself with people who love you. The girls that Holmes preys upon are not surrounded by people who love them. This is why they have been targeted. The second important point that Larson makes is with hard work and dedication, you can achieve greatness. This is proved through Burnham and his architects, who worked so hard to build the White City. They finally prevailed in creating the fair that changed America and gave it hope in times of poverty and sadness. I haven't read other books about the Devil in the White City, but Amazon.com gives it a 4 out of 5 stars. Obviously, it's a pretty good book. Seeing as I am not an architect or a serial killer, and I wasn't alive when the Chicago World's Fair was open, I don't really have any personal experience relating to the subject, other than that I've been to Chicago, where most of the story takes place. There are a few things that I liked about this book. I liked how Erik Larson intertwined two very different stories and used the Chicago World's Fair to connect two very different people. I also liked how he generally switched off each chapter's topic. He would have one chapter about Daniel H. Burnham and his architects, and the next chapter would be about H. Holmes and the women that he killed through his seductive charm. The next chapter would then be about Burnham, followed by Holmes, and so on and so on. I thought the parts about Holmes were more interesting than those about Burnham because they were mysterious and about a young, intriguing doctor, rather than tons of old architects. There are also parts of the story that I didn't like. I did not like how Larson would sometimes bring up a character who he barely introduced in the first place, not mention him for chapters, and then expect us to know who the character was after only speaking of him by his last name. Another thing I didn't like was how Larson went on and on for chapters at a time, just talking about the disasters that hindered the fair. It got to a point where I could almost guess what roofs would collapse and which architect would get sick. The Devil in the White City was an interesting book to read. The tales of Daniel H. Burnham, H. Holmes, and the Chicago World's Fair that connected them are put together in a fashion that made me forget that I was reading a nonfiction book at times. Erik Larson's ability to turn the facts that he found through his research into the captivating novel The Devil in the White City show his truly remarkable skills as a writer. I would recommend this book to anyone who likes history, wants to learn of America's first serial killer, or needs to read a nonfiction book for a school project. I enjoyed reading The Devil in the White City.